Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good whatever time of day it is. Thank you for tuning in to Conversations with Dr. Don. This show is produced and broadcast from Portland, USA. And for your first-time viewers, Conversations with Dr. Don is an ongoing series of one-hour standalone talk shows where I interview interesting people like most of you out there about who they are as unique, one-of-a-kind individuals. And whatever it is we have decided to talk about. Tonight we're going to talk about repaying the good life. And we'll tell you in a moment what that means, repaying the good life. Sounds like an exciting title to me, so I'm waiting to find out what that really means.
Where's your list?
Okay, so the,
Where's your list?
hold on for a minute.
Go ahead.
The show will go in two major segments. In the first segment, we'll go for about 20 minutes or half an hour, talking to John and Kay about who they are, as I described in the introduction. And then we will go into the travels and what's going to go on in the slides that we'll be showing you to do with their travels, okay? So let's go now about who you are. And I guess we should find out your full names. And your full name, John?
I'm John Francis from Dayton, Oregon.
Dayton, Oregon. You have a middle name?
John Arthur Francis. No.
Arthur? You ever use Arthur?
No.
How come?
Oh, he likes the name Francis, you know, Pope Francis, and he likes people to say that he's holy.
I mean, I don't mind Arthur. You know, King John, King Arthur, Pope Francis. You know, I've got, a good list.
And your full name?
My full name is Catherine Mayrose Poe, but I go by Kay, and it's spelled C-A-Y-E. Because when I went to Catholic school, I was told we weren't supposed to use nicknames, and so I thought Kay was spelled with a C.
And you're both from Ohio?
I'm actually from Yamhill County. I was born and raised there in Yamhill County. I'm a true Oregonian, which is unusual in this world
anymore.
And this guy is Canadian.
I was raised in Canada, but lived in the States since the mid-'60s. And spent quite a few years in Moscow, Idaho, working at the University of Idaho and at Washington State University, which is just across the border. And then spent some time in Portland. I really liked Portland before meeting Kay on a bike trip, and we got married, you know, about 13 years ago.
Bike trips are exciting then, huh?
Yep.
Yeah.
And so moved to Dayton with living in her house.
Anything significant about, let's talk to you first, about your cultural heritage. Are you just plain old American white bread?
Kay?
We're talking to you.
Oh, me? No, I was raised in Winnipeg and Calgary, and then I took off and hitchhiked around for 5 years after I got out of university at the University of Alberta. I went and hitchhiked for 5 years around Africa. And so I spent, I'd say the majority of time, well, North Africa and Israel, and then down into what was then Rhodesia, now Zimbabwe, and in South Africa, working as a journalist primarily. So I really enjoyed Africa.
What prompted you to travel Africa as a journalist? Why did you decide?
Interest. You know, there's nothing like going off and traveling. You know, I did that for 1 year before I went to university. I got out of grade 12 and just went hitchhiking for a year around Europe, and got the traveling bug. So journalism and traveling go together.
Did you have any difficulty with your diet or eating and your digestion?
Standard stuff. I think Africa's probably more dangerous now with AIDS and a lot more fighting.
He has a cute story to tell you about when you met up with some people there, and you told them that you were Canadian, and they had said that if you didn't tell them you were Canadian.
Oh, that was I was in Algeria after the Algerian War, and I sat at a cafe, and some Algerians kind of looked at me a little bit and kind of said, "Vous êtes français?" You know, are you French? And I said, "No, je suis Canadien. I'm Canadian." Ah, and they all came and sat down, and we had good talks. And I said, "What if I had said I was French?" And they said, "We would have cut your throat."
And that really stimulated you, didn't it? Huh?
Oh yeah, well, it was, but it was fun. In fact, later that in Algeria too, I was hitchhiking at night, and well, I mean, there was no traffic, so I was walking along the road at night, and these Arabs kind of appeared out of nowhere with these old-fashioned long rifles, and they started tugging at me, and I thought, oh boy, nobody knows where I am, you know. But they took me to a big tent, and we all sat around in the tent and drank tea, and they had me sleep there, and they would sing for me, and then they wanted me to sing for them, and their favorite song they really liked was Bebop-A-Lula. I don't know if you know that old rock and roll.
She is my baby.
They would just clap their hands and sing Bebop-A-Lula.
You got some wonderful memories, I'm sure.
Oh yeah, it was a lot of fun. You meet a lot of people traveling.
And you're both Catholic?
No, I'm no longer Catholic.
When did you give up Catholicism, or being a Catholic?
When, well, there's a little bit of a story that goes with it. I gave birth at 16 in a place down in Alameda, California, and my husband was aboard ship and he was gone. And somehow my allotment got messed up and I had no money and no food or anything. And a priest came and knocked on my door and asked me if I was going to have my baby baptized. And I said, no, not until my husband comes back. And I told him that I was starving and, you know, I needed money and stuff like that. And he said, well, bring your baby in and have it baptized. And so I just kind of walked away from the church at that point.
Yeah, that's pretty powerful stuff.
Yeah, it was pretty powerful.
I was an altar boy for many, many years.
Oh, were you?
In Tribal, Day, and
Yeah.
so on and so on. So I was a Roman Catholic, conservative New Orleans kid, and I gave that up. And now I'm an agnostic atheist, not a pejorative, but atheist and that sort of a thing. And you gave up Catholicism?
No,
I
he
was never a
Catholic.
I was never a Catholic. No, my family was Protestant. I'm not religious at all.
Are you a skeptic, agnostic, and atheist? How would you characterize yourself religion-wise?
Oh, I know. I kind of regard religion as superstition. The ethical side of it's fine. You know, be good to people and
Sure.
And treat others as you would have them treated. I think that's important. The supernatural side of it is of no interest to me. I don't put any belief in that at all.
Some people characterize themselves, people who think like you, as spiritual, rather than being a Protestant or Muslim or something of that nature. Are you spiritual?
I don't know. I have a strong, what I consider ethical background. I mean, I believe in treating people well, and I think if you're talking about the Bible, the Sermon on the Mount, you know, I think is. Virtually all religions, as some people have pointed out, virtually all religions have the same basic ethnic background or ethical background, which is, you know, treat other people well, be kind, don't seek after money all the time, lead a good life, and be merciful and kind. There you go. And I don't know if that's spiritual or not, but that's true. You know, whether you're talking about India or Confucianism or Buddhism or Judaism or Islam or whatever, you know, those are the basic core beliefs in all of them.
So you sounds like you've had some learning about all those major religions.
John, pretty much so, yeah.
Yeah,
he knows.
Karen Armstrong, for instance, I've listened to her quite a bit, and she's, you know, and these are her ideas as well as mine, you know.
Yeah, political persuasion on the political continuum. Are you left or right or in the middle or someplace or what?
Yay, Bernie Sanders.
Don't you like Donald Trump, particularly since he's going to have Sarah Palin supporting him?
That's interesting.
We're dating ourselves here.
Yeah,
Who knows? By the time this program is broadcast, who knows where these people may be. Yeah.
Hopefully it'll be up on YouTube in a couple of days. And this will be before it's formally broadcast on television. Persons from the past or alive today that you particularly admire or look up to as you think about that. Any names come to mind for you? It gives you some idea why you
that's
think the way
kind
that
of
you
an
do it.
unexpected one.
Yeah.
I don't know. I have to think about that one. I
Sure.
have to think about that one for a while.
Yeah.
I mean, like, for a week.
I got another trick question. Shall I ask you right now and get them out of the way?
Well, actually, Pope Francis, I think, is impressive.
Yes, thank you.
And I really admire the man. And I think that he has kind of stepped out of the little box, maybe, that most people think he should be in.
He's really a surprise.
He really is a surprise, yes. And I think it's fantastic. I like to see that.
Okay. Why were you born?
Why were you born?
I think it was a matter of luck, actually. I think why was I born where I was? I think is pretty lucky.
Yeah.
We both Kay and I have lived in comfortable circumstances, and you listen to these reports of these poor people from Syria or Eritrea or Somalia or whatever, and you think, boy, oh boy, are we lucky, to sit here and to have a peaceful house and warm clothing, and here's these people living out, in the snow without a place to go and without food and all the rest of it. We're really lucky.
Yes.
When we were in Madagascar, it was really obvious. The people, what they lived on was food was scarce, and the farmers had toiled with oxen in the rye fields all day, and the rice they sold was often their only source of income. And often that's all they had was rice and maybe a few vegetables thrown in. And the first day we got there at Madagascar, they gave John and I both this big, huge plate of vegetables and rice, and that's all it was. And we couldn't eat all of it because we expected to have other meals. But they only get one meal a day, the children at the school. That's all they have. And so they spend probably an hour eating their food. And so John and I, after 10 or 15 minutes, we took the plate back to them, and they looked very scornfully at us and dumped the food onto somebody else's plate, both of ours, and handed it back out again. So we learned pretty fast what was polite and what wasn't.
What persuaded you to do all this traveling, all these different places that seem sort of strange or different for the average American? What persuaded you to do this kind of traveling and experiencing?
I don't know, as it was a persuasion, it just kind of happened.
But yeah, we
and
thought
what we wanted to do,
Yeah, we thought it would be nice to sort of pay back to a certain extent,
definitely.
to go into poorer countries and see if we could in some way help some people, at any rate. Because we've lived, a really good life, and it seems to me that to a certain extent you have an obligation to try to help some other people in turn, pass it along.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And Kay did that particularly. She's really good at sewing, and so our last couple of projects, she's taken in sewing machines and helped people set up a business to make some money, a small business to make some money sewing.
Mm-hmm.
And that's proven very. They've been appreciated. The people have really helped themselves by being able to do this.
Okay.
In Madagascar, we had to buy wheel type of sewing machines, and I learned to sew on an old treadle machine. My grandmother taught me how to sew.
My mother had an old singer.
The old singer, yeah. And I can remember when I was a little teeny girl sitting on the pedal itself and going up and down as my grandmother pushed it up and down. And so when I got there and I bought the old machines, I had Grandma with me.
So what did you do to earn a living when you were working?
I was a journalist for quite a few years, and then in Africa and in the U.S. for a while, and then I got more and more interested in video and television production. So I took a master's in at UCLA, and that's what brought me down to the States. And then so I got into television production at the University of Idaho, and then at Washington State University, mostly scientific and agricultural types of programming, things like, pest control and erosion and economics and things of that sort. So I was in video production for 10, 15, 20 years until my eyesight started fading. I can't see very well now. So.
But it's okay because I tell him what he should see.
And that works out okay?
Yeah, it does. He tells me I'm beautiful every day, and I tell him his vision is just fine.
So you've been doing this kind of traveling for how many years?
Well, I started traveling when I was in, it was in a couple of batches. I did that 5 years of traveling, and then got back into Africa. I was married before, and I took my wife over there, and we were there for another 18 months, primarily Angola, Namibia, South Africa, and Rhodesia again. And then I went over once more to Rhodesia for 6 months to work as a journalist because they were having a pretty good-sized war at that time. And then when Kay and I got together later, then we started these projects. We went to India together and taught in India for 6 months. We had a friend of ours who taught at a school in southern India and said that Kay and I should go over there and teach. So she was teaching English mostly to the staff, and I was teaching video production in India for 6 months, and that was really interesting.
It's interesting that in India they liked us from the Northwest because they said we didn't have an accent. They said even from California there's a slight accent. So.
Yeah, most of the people, virtually, I mean, in India, India, you can get by in English, just about, everywhere pretty well. We were in the southern part of India called Tamil Nadu. Everybody spoke Tamil. I was going to learn Tamil, and then I got a book, and I found there were 400 letters in the alphabet, plus like 60 or 70 conjunction, different conjoined letters. So I decided, no, I think I'll stick with English.
Do you know any other languages?
Not really. High school French, and you pick it up at the time. I remember, I was in Israel for a year, and so I picked up some pretty good Hebrew. And in South Africa, I learned some Afrikaans, but nothing that I'm fluent in at all, no.
But the French helped when we were in Madagascar.
Yeah, high school French did.
Yeah.
Because Madagascar is a former French colony.
Mm-hmm. So, what do you think of the mainstream media in this country? Do you think it's left, right, centrist, or what?
I'm
we don't listen to it.
We listen to NPR a lot. We really think that OPB is good, but the rest of I'm kind of dismayed. When you come back from other countries, you get a different view of American television, and we'll sit there and listen and switch back and forth between CNN and Fox, after the debates or something, and particularly Fox. I mean, I'm really surprised that, well, not only the fact that it's just like constant propaganda, but the number of commercials on American television I find really disheartening. You'll watch CNN or Fox or something, and for the first segment of a 1-hour program, there'll maybe be 10 minutes of talk, and then they'll have 4 or 5 commercials, and pretty soon the talk segments get shorter and shorter, and the number of commercials gets longer and longer, and pretty soon you're finishing up a section of commercials. We always mute them, of course. I mean, we're not going to watch them, But then they'll come on for like 2 or 3 questions, and then bang, to another set of commercials. And I don't see why that. I don't see why they should be allowed to use the public airwaves in such an irresponsible manner. I really think there ought to be some kind of restrictions on it. But, people say, oh, freedom of speech, but commercials, it's not like they own the airwaves. But that's just my opinion on it. I think there's way too many commercials. So much of the television is pretty immature. So I'm not a big television fan myself.
So the people who want to play the commercials and pay for them are the ones who actually own the political process, because they contribute to the campaigns. And talking about the presidential campaign, who are you going to vote for in November?
Well,
John's a big supporter of Bernie Sanders, and he's
yeah, I'd
been
like
out
to.
there.
They've been talking.
Yeah.
Sanders been talking about a revolution. I mean, it would be a good thing. He's an underdog, and you know, by the time we're speaking here, he may have vanished. But he's the only one who seems to offer anything new or different.
Don't you like any of the Republican candidates?
No. They make a big deal out of being warlike and tough and all of that. You know, fear. It used to be communism, and now it's terrorism, etc. I mean, there's more people being killed in a couple of weeks by drunken drivers than there ever is by terrorism. You know, I think there's a certain amount of, I guess, trying to rouse people up. You know, you get a couple of people killed by some gunmen, and all of a sudden, you know, this is a huge thing, and America is threatened, and all the rest of it. You know, it's very exaggerated, and I think there's a lot of hypocrisy involved in it.
So, what do you think about the American political system nowadays, as it's working out right now?
How about you, babe? Do you want to speak on that?
No, go ahead.
The American political system? I think the American political system is broken. Well, I mean, it was never meant to be democratic. The emphasis on property rights right from the beginning, when the Constitution was written, it was only 5 to 10% of the people could vote.
Yeah.
You had to be a property owner, etc. And the idea was that they didn't really want democracy. They wanted a country owned by property owners. And they didn't want it to be able to be adjusted or to go for the people at all. And that's showing now. The government is, in practical terms, is very badly broken, I think. And so you get people like the Koch brothers with $900 million in this campaign coming up and all the rest of it. We don't really live in a democracy.
Yeah.
I don't think.
How do you fix what's going on in America today politically?
I don't know if you can.
And if you can't fix it, what's going to happen?
It'll decay. It'll becoming as it is now, much more of a dictatorship. Surveillance, you know, and that.
I think we live with a cloud of fear over our heads. Everybody does, and perhaps if they would go to some of the foreign countries and spend some time with some of the people in some of these countries.
You go to a country that's well governed, you know, like Northern Europe. We spent some time in Holland, for instance, you know, and it's $1,000 to go to university, and if you're more than 200 miles away from the university, they subsidize your travel there. Everybody has health care, you know. They don't spend enormous amounts on defense, which we do. Remember, America hasn't been attacked since you know, Pearl Harbor. We go and attack other countries.
John and I belong to two organizations. One of them is Affordable Travel, and the other one is Evergreen. And what it is you can go and stay in people's homes. You can tell him more than I can.
Well, yeah, Affordable Travel, it's a travel club. You go and you can stay in people's homes, like we stayed in some homes in Paris or in Amsterdam, and there's a bunch of others of these travel clubs, and that way you get to meet the people, and they show you around. These are people who want to have travelers staying with them.
And want to know foreigners. And when we stayed in Amsterdam, it was just really fantastic. We were there for 4 nights. And they took us everywhere, and they enjoyed us, and they brought their family in for dinner and everything. And we just really had a good time. And when it came time to leave, and John took him the money, for
Yeah, they want $30
is
a
$30.
night.
We were supposed to pay $30 a night. They refused to take the money, and so I said, okay, then I'll take that money and I'll put it towards sewing machines in the next project that I do. So it was payback, you know, pay it forward.
And there's also an organization called Friendship Force, in which your club, like there's
that's a great
there's
one.
about 370 Friendship Force clubs around the world, including a bunch in the U.S. And so your club, like we belong to a club in Salem, and we go to, you visit the club, like we went and visited the club in Tokyo, and our club went and visited the Tokyo club, and then the Taiwan club, and the Thailand club. And so, you know, you just take one airplane ride, and then you can go and visit all three. Stay at the home of club members over there for a week, and then go to the next place and stay for a week, etc. And other clubs will come and visit our club as well. You know, and so it's a really good way of traveling. You'd have no, you know, you pay for the transportation and everything there, but you don't have any hotel bills.
Or many meals or anything, and they give an upfront cost to transport our club and their club to go to see different sites and different parks. And
So it's a good way.
It was just really fantastic.
It's a really good way of traveling. Anybody should, anybody wants to look it up, just go The Friendship Force.
The Friendship Force.
TheFriendshipForce.org, I guess it is. Yeah.
I don't know.
Just Google Friendship
But
Force.
there's a club in Portland and there's a club in Salem, and so
There's one down in Medford too, and of course there's 90 some clubs in the U.S. And a lot of the exchanges. Our club will do an international outbound exchange and a domestic outbound exchange each year, and an inbound exchange, international and local. Like our club just went, some of them, and not everybody goes, of course, but our club went to Australia recently and to India before that. No, they went to Brazil recently. Yeah. And we have clubs have come in from Baton Rouge and from Australia, things like that.
Oh my
And
gosh,
if
my
the-
bucket list is going to get this long.
well, and if the club, you might tell them about how if the club doesn't fill up.
Usually, yeah, okay, then.
We went to Lethbridge.
Yeah, for instance, what happened was when we went to Tokyo, for instance, and that the Tokyo people said, we can take 24 people, you know, and only about 16 people signed up from our club. So that out on the web, it says, hey, you know, the Salem club's going to Tokyo, you know, and they got room for 8 people. And people from other clubs, they look at the website and say, hey, I think I'll go and join that one, you know, and they can join as well. So each week, if you look at the website, you'll see a whole list of exchanges that are taking place, and you know, that have got vacancies, and you can join them. And so you have a real choice. You can say, you know, it'll say, oh, look at this, a club from Chicago is going to Russia, and a club from Seattle is going to Australia or whatever, you know, and you say, I think I'll go on that one. So you have a huge list of clubs to pick from.
That sounds interesting, and now there's a new thing I've got to dwell on and research and see if I want to pursue that, my wife and I. So let's take a little break now and then come back and talk about the main reason you're here, talking about your travels and paying back for the good life you've led so far. Let's take a break, Mr. Director. Okay. Oh, when you were born in 1928. Hello, looks like we're back, and thank you for staying
You say
tuned.
there was a list you wanted?
No. Okay, never mind.
For you viewers who missed the opening of the show, Conversations with Dr. Don that you're watching is an ongoing series of one-hour standalone talk shows where I interview interesting people like my guests tonight. And we're going to continue talking about repaying a good life. I have a couple of questions that I got from my guests, and the first one is, how have you tried to repay your good life? Talk about that. How are you trying to repay your good life? Your projects that you're doing, whatever.
I think, well, mine zeroes in on women, and yeah, I try to repay it by taking sewing machines into a area and helping the women develop a product that they can sell, but also they make pads for the girls that live there. It's like when we were in Madagascar and Tanzania, the girls don't have pads, and so a lot of times they stay out of school for a week at a time, and by that time then they just keep going with the school. They just lose their schooling, and eventually they drop out, and it's just really sad.
Yeah, this was suggested to us by a doctor from the Salem area who spent a number of times over in Africa, and he told us that this was a real problem over there, so that's where we got the idea.
One of the things that I found out when I got there is we walked to the market when we were in Madagascar, and I thought, okay, I have to buy flannel because that'll be fine for pads. And you don't buy just yards of material, you buy a whole bolt. And so, of course, my pack horse here carried it back. So we also had to carry back all of our food for the week because where we stayed at was pretty primitive, and we had to pack in all of our food for the week and for the other people that lived there too. And we just had 2 backpacks to do that, and it was an hour away to the market and an hour back, and the market was only there once a week.
But then what kind of food did you eat in these different countries? Would you buy supplies and prepare American-style food, or food that was...
whatever was there. In Madagascar, it was just vegetables and rice, pretty much. But what I do is I always take in... John and I take very few clothing in because we know that we can go to a market somewhere and get clothing if we need it. So we take very little with us. And in fact, when we were in India, I decided to take only 1 pair of shoes. And so we went to market, and I found a pair that looked just like Nikes. They had a little swoop on the side and everything. I thought, oh, wow, look at this, Nike shoes. I was so excited in India, I think I paid like $12 for them. And I thought, wow, this is great. So I took them home, and I put them on as soon as I got back to the place we were staying, and tried to walk around on them, and I thought, boy, these feel really hard. And then I lifted up the insole, and they were wood in the inside of them.
Did you continue to wear them?
No. So I finally found a used pair of shoes and wore them.
So we're going to talk about the places you visited that you'll be talking about later on, and India and Mexico and Madagascar and Tanzania. So then we'll talk a little bit about each of these countries that you were in, and we'll have some slides to show a little of what went on there, and then you talk about those, okay?
Sure.
So in India, you were taught in a school for a semester?
Yeah, we taught for about 6 months in India, right? And
then in Mexico, you helped build a school. In Madagascar, you're setting up sewing instructions again and the equipment. And in Tanzania, setting up a sewing business at an orphanage. And I'm sure there's a lot of stories around the people you ran into and the situations you ran into. So shall we start talking about India first, and then when it's appropriate, we'll show the slides that you took there?
Yeah. Okay, then fine. Actually, we could probably start with the slides right now, and we can talk over them if you like. Just give you an idea of what India was like. So why don't we just start those India slides now? Are they going?
Here comes India.
There you go.
There you are.
Yeah, we were in Tamil Nadu, which is in the south there.
Yeah,
Yeah.
very bottom. Yeah.
Nadu.
And we did take a trip to the Andamans while we were there, and to Sri Lanka too.
Okay, and what are we seeing there?
Where the streets. This is a street scene. And this is what I called fast food alley. All of those little buildings there. And of course, there was a lot of temples and a lot of carvings and.
Are those people on that thing?
If you see, there's one lady there with an arrow through her cheeks to show her devotion. And of course, this was John can probably talk about what comes up next, and I think that's the elephants. And
Oh yeah, that's an elephant festival that was there. They see who's got the nicest
Fisher.
elephants.
Yeah, there it is.
Oh, there
yeah.
they are.
Yeah.
See, pretty fancy.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And yeah. What were they doing actually, John, to teach?
That's an annual sort of a festival, a parade
Yeah.
or something.
Yeah. This is the cows, and the cows, of course, always have the right of way, and you can see that when knocking me off the sidewalk. They didn't like me there. So they rule. Cows rule. And there's some of the girls that were in the school that we were at, and this is a Heart and Hands pledge that I can tell you about that later.
It came from Salem, actually.
Yeah, it came from Salem. And so that pledge went around the world. And this is the electrical grid. And you can tell where they have a lot of electrical outages. I can't even imagine this, how they can sort it all out. And this is the video store. And all of those are pirated, by the way. And this is a lumber yard. And it was all hand done. And this is, of course, a bike repair shop right along the river. And they just set it up, and that's it. And then this is the ladies washing the water in the river. And
Washing laundry.
laundry.
How they feel about you taking their pictures?
They didn't mind. They
it.
loved it. Yeah, they were fine. This is one of the villages that we visited, and they're pretty poor.
Yeah, these were native people. What would you call them?
Yeah.
I don't even remember what
Yeah.
term
So
it was.
there's a whole
These are
range
the-
of colors in this.
Yeah, these are girls at an orphanage, and you can see how young they are. They're 12 and 13 years old, and they would have been,
The mothers put them in there so that they won't get married off so quickly.
married off at the age of 12. And
There's a lot of class difference in India, huh?
Yeah.
And then that's where I had problems. I was
Is that the end of it?
Yeah.
Okay, that's it.
I was there, and I thought maybe I would be able to teach them mediation, because I've been a mediator for over 20 years now, and I failed miserably. And
Impossible task, huh?
Well, the thing is, in mediation, you see, if let's say you have a student and a teacher, or two people from a neighborhood, and each of you can speak frankly. You give your side of the story, they give their side of the story, and then you kind of work out some possible way to come to an agreement between the two. You know, but in India, a person of a lower stature would never contradict or say anything bad to the person of a higher stature.
Or their mother, or their older sibling, or a classmate maybe that was a higher stature.
Pretty strict adhering to the class difference.
Very much so. Much more so
and
than
it's
here.
advertised as a democracy. India, world's biggest democracy. It isn't really democracy then.
No, not really as democratic at all.
The children were having, they were teenagers, most of them, were having, little disputes among themselves. And so I said, okay, let's do the Heart and Hands pledge, and I will not use my hands or words for hurting myself or others. And you put your hand down and you draw around your fingers and you write the pledge in there and you sign it and date it. And then I added a little caveat to it where I said, in all issues that were major to you will be put aside. And so anything that you had against somebody no longer will exist. And anyway, the kids all came in and took the pledge and drew around their hand and dated it. And it was really neat, because the girls then started making macrame bracelets. And so everybody had a bracelet that looked the same. So if you took the pledge, they'd give you a bracelet, the girls did. And so you'd go to an assembly and you'd see the kids all raising their hands of the bracelets of the kids that took the pledge. And we had over 300 children that took the pledge before I left. And adults too.
This Hearts and Hands thing was created by a lady in Salem. So we got a bit of Salem, Oregon over there in India now. Anyway.
And before we left, we had two young boys from, where were they from?
Korea.
Korea, yeah. They came to us and asked me if I could they wanted a kit to take back to their parents and their family and everything. And so I developed a little kit for them to take back so that they could do the Heart and Hands pledge when they got to Korea. So it is going around the world.
Wonderful. Did you have any indication of the success of this idea?
Yeah, periodically I'll get an email from one of the girls and says that she still believes in it and she still gets her friends to take the pledge when they have big issues so that they can leave the issues behind them. You know, and I actually tell them to throw them over your shoulder.
So you made your mark.
Yeah, I did, yeah. Oregon made their mark.
So any more comments about what you did in India?
Well, I
before
mean, we
move
could
on?
certainly talk about India for an hour. You know, there was a lot, but no, we really enjoyed it. But I guess we could go on to the next one and show a little bit about Mexico. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I helped to build a school. Talk about a little about helping to build a school in Mexico.
Well, it was just a. This was probably the most conventional thing that we've done. There's a church in Dayton that was going to go down and give and help a church, sort of a fellow church down in India. I mean, in Mexico. I mean, and so we went down with them. And
is that what's being shown now?
This is what's showing now, and they're putting the roof on and the people there were so wonderful, and they made sure that we had plenty of food and interesting flavors.
What part of Mexico was this in?
in the Baja. It's on the
Baja Peninsula.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And,
yeah, everybody's eating.
Yeah, oh yeah, it was and the kids. We took some high school kids with us, and they enjoyed playing with the babies and the children. And yeah, we had a good time.
Who took those pictures? You?
John did most of them. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, was that you at the end?
Yeah.
Okay, that's it. Yeah. Anyway, yeah, we really enjoyed Mexico, and a lot of churches from this area, I think, go down to Mexico or to Central America in general, and help with construction projects, etc. And there's a certain amount of corruption involved in it too, because some churches or Mexican towns will charge you like $1,000 each to go down and do that, and that's to pay for all the materials, and they'll build a wall, and then when the church leaves, that wall comes down, and they'll bring in another church to build another wall, and so there's a certain amount of just to get money each time. So you have to be careful. We found out about this because one group said hey, we've built a wall down there, etc. And then some other people said, well, hey, that looks like the wall we built 2 years earlier, and they sort of investigated and found out that there was kind of a wall building industry in this one town.
Do you think there's more corruption down there than there is here in America?
Different kind of corruption.
Yeah, it's different.
Corruption here is more institutionalized,
When we tried to take our sewing machines into Tanzania, they wanted bribes, and I started pretending like I was crying, and they finally said, oh no. And then one man, he wouldn't let me go, so I handed him a package of turkey jerky, and he let me go.
Bribing with turkey jerky.
Turkey jerky, yeah, there you go.
So, any more thoughts about what happened in Mexico?
No, we didn't. Mexico was kind of, it was pretty short. It was only about 10 days. And, there was just a group of us there helping them. And the Mexicans themselves were very helpful, too. They took part in the building as well. And, it's fine. There was nothing really adventurous or new in it at all.
Did you have to have any special inoculations or vaccinations before you went there?
No.
Well, we're rather fortunate. We have Kaiser Insurance, and they have a travel clinic. And you call the travel clinic, and then 2 days or a day or so later, they call you and tell you what inoculations you need, what medications. They prescribe them, and you pick them up at the pharmacy and everything. So it's just fantastic.
Very efficient.
Very, very efficient,
Yeah.
So shall we move on to Madagascar?
Okay, sure, yeah. We could start showing the pictures of Madagascar now. And,
Madagascar journey, that looks like it.
Yeah.
Yeah, there it is.
And there's Madagascar. It's an island off the east coast of Africa. It's pretty big.
And we did go across to Zanzibar while we were there, too, where I found markets for...
Is this Antananarivo?
Yeah.
Yeah, this is the capital city. You get an idea of what it's like there with the people. People there, a lot of them they don't look very African. Most of them are actually of Polynesian descent.
There's
It's okay. This is in downtown Antananarivo. In there, you can see how they have all the cans on top of and it just scared me to death. That is a heavy, huge metal plate they're pushing uphill on just a cart, and if it slipped, I just can't even imagine. This is a Catholic school where we went to, where they feed the children and take care of the children and give them every day. They give them at least one meal a day, and these are mostly orphan. There, the mothers are waiting.
Mothers are waiting because they're afraid the children could get stolen. There's a lot of stealing of children and selling them. Yeah.
That's sad.
And this is the rice fields. You're looking down where we were at. We were on the hillside, and the rice fields were below us. And that's what they use. They use oxen. They don't have any mechanized equipment at all. And this is these are the mothers of the school where we were teaching at, and they would come in and help plant so that their children could go to school. It costs, public schools charge $2.50 to $5 a month, but the school we were at only charges 50 cents. And here they are, they're taking the rice in to have it milled.
So what do they do to work?
These are the houses that they live in. The upstairs is always devoted to cooking, and the downstairs is sleeping. So the whole family sleeps on rice mats on the bottom floor, and the upper floor is like I said, for cooking, strictly cooking.
Did you sleep on rice mats too?
No, we didn't.
We had a little guest house.
Yeah, these are the bricks, and they make them all by hand. And you'll see another shot here where they're making them all by hand form the bricks and then lay them out in the sun to harden.
So the guys who are making the bricks, they earn some money for doing that work?
I assume that, yeah. There's very little food that gets lost here. You'll see these are all onions, and they pretty much use most of it. They're grinding the rice up.
So you have some appreciation of what it's like to be an
very
American.
Very much so. Very, very much so.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. And this is the little town, if you want to call it a town, that we lived in. And you can see Tim Horton shirts on the kids. And the reason is that this was a Canadian school we were at. And Tim Horton had donated a bunch of shirts. Again, you see this a lot. Here, this little girl's about 6 years old, and she's carrying her little brother or little sister. The population in Madagascar turns over. Doubles every 30 years.
Oh my gosh.
And so how they can say, and this is a circumcision. They circumcise the children at age 6. Which kind of makes you cringe a little bit. And this is where they're carrying the only way they can carry the rice is on bicycles. And this is a market. And again, I was telling you can go through there and you can find most of the clothes. And this is how he sells the meat. You just go and buy it once a week. And
what kind of government do they have there in Madagascar?
John would know that better than I would.
No, just it was a military government. I don't know. It doesn't seem very democratic. There doesn't seem to be much government as such. I don't know. It's a quasi-democratic government, I think.
This is a little quasi-store, if you want to call it, and they sell about 4 or 5 items out of that behind that grill. And this is a school we were at, and they have more equipment than most schools do, because they have a nice chalkboard that they can write on. And there's John. And
there's John.
You see a lot of Tim Horton shirts there.
We should be getting to the sewing project pretty quick.
Yeah. And the lady in the middle is blind, and they allowed her to teach at the school.
Blind, huh?
Yeah, she is blind. And there's a plate of the food. You can see how big the plates of foods are for the children.
Because they've got to take a lot of rice in.
And this is a sewing project, and I was working with the.
So the pad you're talking about, the machine sits on the pad.
No, it just sits on a table. It's just a little box that it's in. That's some of the material we buy, and this is where we were handing out underpants to each of the girls, and she was trying on the underpants because it was something that they had never had before.
I'll be darned.
And we had to figure out a way how to make underpants too. And I found out if you go to market and you ask for the t-shirts that they don't want and they're going to throw away, I could buy a big bundle of them for $1 or $2, and we would come back and we'd cut them up and make underpants out of them.
Civilization.
Yeah. And this was a royalty.
Yeah, some past palace or something. Wasn't very palatial. And what are we looking at?
That's
Wildlife?
beautiful.
Yeah, looking out over the valley.
Oh,
And their trees, you can see there's not many trees. The trees, back up, they eat rice. And what do you have to do to cook rice? You have to have a fire to cook the rice. And they've pretty much denuded everything there. Everything that you can imagine that can be burnt is burnt. And they're making a compost pile, which is something they'd never done before because they don't have that much to put into a compost. And the little critters, this is...
Lemur?
Yeah, lemurs. And I felt very sorry for the animals that were in cages there and what we saw.
The turtle is the last shot.
Yeah, the turtle's the last shot. But to be honest with you, Don, if my child was starving and there was an endangered animal over there, and I thought that if I killed that animal, nobody would find out and cook it and feed my children because they're hungry, I probably would do the same thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They turned off the...
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, so okay, we're going to talk about Tanzania now, and you're setting up your sewing business at an orphanage. So...
Yeah, we don't have any photos of that here. Kate, we had 6 or 8. I think it was six sewing machines, wasn't it?
8 sewing machines.
8 sewing machines, and it was at this orphanage, and the people at the orphanage, the orphanage would hire workers, ladies from the area. They would check out which ones were able to sew, and they used these sewing machines to make. Kay decided that bags would be a good thing for the tourists.
How did you get the machines, the sewing machines?
John and I took in 4 sewing machines ourselves, and like I said, we take very little clothing in, and we can just buy whatever it is when we get there.
Put them in our suitcases.
And put them in our suitcase. What I do is I'd go to the senior center, and the ladies in the senior centers would give me tons of thread and needles and all kinds of things. One of the things I found is they gave me some pin cushions. Now, pin cushions, you wouldn't think that would be such a fantastic, but I took a couple of them, and they were delighted. They'd never used a pin cushion before. And
Talk about primitive.
Yeah, and when I got there, the women had already started doing some of the sewing, and because they had 4 machines that volunteers had taken in for me. And they were cutting out all the material with scissors and everything. Well, we reduced that where the ladies would have Mondays, they would come in and they'd cut out all their material for the rest of the week. And we reduced it down to a half a day, one person with cutting mats and tools, just by taking in the cutting mats and the wheels and stuff. And those were mostly donated by seniors from the senior centers.
Senior centers in that country, or
No,
here in America?
here in America, actually McMinnville is where I went, in Newburgh. Yeah.
And we went to Zanzibar as well and checked out different places that would like these tourist bags. They're kind of fancy looking African bags, that people can carry. And so the people at the orphanage were making these bags and selling them, and now the orphanage is making some money, from it.
Because the tourists buy it, and we went to Zanzibar even and got customers for them. So each time we do this, like I said, Madagascar was a start, and then Tanzania, and I don't know quite where we're going to go next. But
and you're going some more.
Yeah, we're thinking about Haiti. Right now we've kind of got in the works about Haiti and a birthing clinic in Haiti.
But the person who would like us to come and set up sewing machines in her birthing clinic, unfortunately, wasn't able to raise the money for electricity yet, so they're waiting for electricity.
And the bribes there that you have to pay in Haiti is just phenomenal. I have a friend that's been there 6 times, and he's trying to put in electricity and trying to help the people, and the bribes are just horrendous.
Well, sounds like you've had a good time doing what you've been doing, and you're talking about a boat trip to Alaska.
Oh yeah, that was a fun one. That was
Well,
just
yeah,
for us.
we just
That was for
that's
us.
something I could recommend to people. You know, take the ferries up, because the ferries will go into the different ports in Alaska.
And we've
With
talked
the-
about that.
With
my
the
wife
cruise
and I.
ships, the cruise
oh,
ships.
it's fun.
The cruise ships can't get in there because the water, you know, they're not deep enough. So you get into these towns that are not really tourist ridden or anything like that, and you can camp on the back of these ferries. So when you're riding up there, you don't have to rent a room or anything on these ferries. You just put your tent on the back of the ferry, and you duct tape it down so that the wind doesn't get it. But we traveled up the inland passage in Alaska and really enjoyed it.
Now, what about what you're doing here in your own community here in Oregon?
Oh, well, we do quite a bit, actually. I'm a mediator, and like I said, I've been a mediator since the early 90s. And I talked John into trying it, too. And we, you want to talk about the school? And
Well, we teach mediation at
Tomorrow we'll be
the
doing
Dayton Elementary School, and kids are really good at mediating, and they'll be mediating disputes, mostly grade 5 kids.
Time is running out for us, so we're going to need to stop here and allow just a few seconds, 30 seconds or so, for you to tell the viewers anything else you want to, as a closing comment.
no, you're involved in the Democratic Party. And
Yeah, if you want to, you just check johnandkay.com. That's JOHNANDCAYEK.com, and you can see the pictures of all of these and all of the other places we've been as well.
And for people that don't want to volunteer but that want to travel, I highly recommend Friendship Force, and they might check out Affordable Travel in Evergreen too. Those clubs are really good too.
Boy, you have certainly given me some new thoughts and new ideas, and I'm going to add to my bucket list. And thanks again for coming on, and
Well, thank you.
we'll see you next time.
Yeah,
Great. Hey, thanks, Don.
You betcha.
thank you, Don.
PSA, public service announcements before we leave. Anything we should tell the viewers before we shut down, Mr. Director? We're going to tell them about the ACLU, the American Civil Liberties Union, which is my favorite organization that I belonged to for many, many years. And we'll talk about my show being seen on the web, Google, Don Baham, YouTube, and there's hundreds of shows on there that I've done over the many years. And you'll find one or two that you find interesting. And there's an announcement about the show you've been watching again. And I want to tell you about KFC, not Kentucky Fried Chicken, Dr. Don's KFC. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time.